Maredsous Blond.
Life is too short to be drinking shitty beer.
Welcome to another edition of Bands, Bikes and Booze Reviews. I don't know what it is, but I seem to be inundated with Belgian beer at the moment. I'm not complaining. Well, this is what I've got. This is a Maredsous Blond. Now, the first thing I should get clear on this one, and it is genuine. I've seen interviews with the monks and all that. They still drink this for their dinner, believe it or not. Now, if that's not an incentive to become a monk, I don't know what is. But it's one of them ones that hasn't got the stamp, the European abbey stamp, you know, the traditional Trappist stamp, because they're not Trappist monks. But they just brew this beer, and they brew two other types. They brew a brune or a double, and they brew a triple as well. And this, of course, is a single or blonde, if you like. And they're based in Namur, which is the capital city of the Walloon region of Belgium. So obviously that's the French-speaking part. And they're a Benedictine monastery, even though they haven't got the stamp as a genuine monastery or Trappist beer. Is it? Yeah, the Trappist beers are Benedictines, I think. But anyway, it's all by the by. It is a genuine monastery that's brewing this beer, but it's owned by Duvel Moortgat. So at some point it was obviously an acquisition or a takeover by them, and this lot, the money they make, they say it goes for the upkeep of the abbey, but the money also goes to Africa as well. They give a lot of money to Africa too. So with that in mind, you know, it's quite fitting that when you see interviews with the monks and they're talking about this beer and how enthusiastic they are, this does sound like a very good beer indeed. And on their website they say that this is stored in caves, or it's fermented in caves for 2 months. So this is a top fermented beer that's stored in oak barrels in caves for 2 months, and then it's sent out. So there's I would think a double fermentation going on here. So this is bottle conditioned, but it's also stored for 2 months as well, which on paper really does sound good. So let's stop gassing. Let's investigate this beer. Right. Maredsous, I think it's pronounced, or Maredsous, I'm not sure. It's French anyway. And 6%, 330ml bottle. It is a blonde, or a single, as it's sometimes known. It's more often known just as a blonde rather than a single, because you've got the singles, doubles and triples, and obviously they're indicative of the ABV that's in there, in the beer in question. Ingredients, all in French. Is there English ingredients on here? Ingredients, agua is... Oh, here we go. Water, barley malt, glucose syrup, hops and yeast. Yeah, I did find this on some of the beers. When they put glucose syrup in, I don't think it's as good as the candy sugar. And Duvel Moortgat are quite synonymous with using glucose syrup. It's obviously cheaper than the candy sugar, so it's gonna give it, in my opinion, it's gonna give it a slightly different flavour, but that should not detract from whether this is a good beer or not. So let's just get it open and let's just see what it tastes like. Alright, this is my second Belgian beer of the day. Just tried the Rochefort 8, which was really nice. Surprisingly, lots of milk chocolate flavours in there. I didn't mention it in the review, but I let it warm up till it was almost room temperature, and then the milk chocolate just came flooding out on it. But yeah, that was maybe I should have drank that at room temperature. But the spirit alcohol was absolutely enormous on its own anyway. Anyway, let's talk about this beer. Here's the cap. That is the Maredsous cap on there. Label on the front. Maredsous, and there's the back. If your eyesight's good, that's what my eyesight's like when I look at it.
Turn left to captain's cabin.
That's why I cannot fucking read what's on the back. Now, autofocus, you better not fuck about. There you go. Right, let's get into the chalice. This is what they recommend, and their chalice is very similar to this style chalice, so that's a good thing for all you pedants out there. I'm going to try and get a bit of head on this, because on the last one, the Rochefort, the head dissipated quite quickly. There, look at that. Now that's what you'd expect. Look at them levels of carbonation on there. That's like a little whirlwind in there. And there it is in the glass. Now it's reasonably cloudy. Can you see that? All the yeast sediment that's made that cloudy. And that carbonation typhoon at the bottom of the glass is just going to spread that yeast all around the glass. This is why carbonation is really concentrated on in Belgian beers, because a lot of the time they are bottom fermented, and that carbonation, it moves that yeast around. And of course in the yeast there's not only nutrients, but there's also flavour as well. And you've seen the experiments, or you should have seen the experiments I do with wheat beer sometimes, when I pour it out and I don't put the yeast in, or I leave half or 3/4 of the bottle and I just show it's quite clear, then I just swirl it around and throw it in, and then you see it all go cloudy. That's pretty similar to what's happened here. I mean, that carbonation is still going for it. Get my fucking hand out of the way. Look at that. Gert lush, as they say in Bristol. Alright, what have we got on the nose? Not a great deal. Not a great deal indeed. There's the faintest suggestion of banana and sweet malt. But the flavours or the aromas, should I say, flavours, I haven't tasted it yet. The aromas are very subdued. That's disappointing. Normally even on a good blonde at 6%, you do get big flavours. Normally on a blonde at 6%, you do get big aromas, but I'm not getting that here. Anyway, let's stop gassing and let's start drinking this before the head dissipates completely. Bottoms up. And that's a typical Belgian blonde. Let me have another dive in on this. Them flavours are quite subdued, I think. Or is it me that's just been drinking the Rochefort 8 and this just doesn't have them big massive flavours? I don't think it is. I think that this has some of the characteristics of a Belgian blonde, but they're very subdued. Fucking carbonation is fucking killing my iPad, I know that. Right, the flavours are very subdued, and I'm really struggling to try and get anything from that at all. There's vague banana. There is some sweetness on that. There's a lot of carbonation. Now, if you look in the glass, that's still going for it. Alright, and that is translating into the mouthfeel. But even with that carbonation, it is not really pushing them flavours around at all. And whereas it's not unpleasant, there's nothing nasty that's putting me off this beer, there really isn't a big amount of flavour in there. It leaves quite a dry, bitter finish on that. I'm wondering whether that's the hops that are in there. And, you know, for it containing glucose syrup, I will say that is not sweet. Now, if I compare this to the Leffe Blonde is a lot more sweet than this. This leaves quite a bit of finish on it. And that's what I'm getting. Slight spirit alcohol is adding to that bitterness on the end. But, I don't know, I think it's just lacking in flavour. You know, I'd be expecting a reasonable amount of sweetness. Now, I'm not talking triples here, I'm just talking, you know, just a small amount of sweetness, carbonation, which I am getting, to be fair. I would have expected a bit more banana and a little touch more clove in that as well. And the spirit alcohol's there, that's there on the finish, and it's giving it a bit of finish, but generally I'm really having to concentrate to get the flavours. The flavours don't leap out at me at all. Having said that, as I say, there's no real nasties. It goes down quite easily, but it does leave that bitter finish. And on other blondes, it's been bittersweet, if you know what I mean. There's some yeasty esters on there too that, you know, I would be expecting that aren't really there. I'm saying they're not there. They're there, but they're so subdued. And generally, this has, you know, this has only really got flavour on the finish, and it's bitter, and the bitterness is being added to by the spirit alcohol, which I think is a little bit of a shame, really, you know. I think it's a cross between hop bitterness and spirit alcohol. There is a little touch of, you know, as I let this warm up slightly, as it's getting warm, I'm getting a little touch of banana and clove from the yeast on this, but it is so subdued. To its credit, Leffe had more flavour, and that is, you know, produced in far larger numbers. Let me see if I just try and kill the carbonation a little bit and give it a bit of a head, whether I can get any more out of it. I'm really struggling at the moment. Not really. That's a little bit of a disappointment, that is. I would have expected more from that, to be honest, and sadly that wasn't forthcoming. So what's the verdict on the Maredsous Abbey Blonde. Overall, little bit disappointing, to be honest. Now, I know blondes, you know, I've tasted some really good blondes as well. The Castile Blonde is really good. And to be fair, the Leffe stuff, it's got more of a pungent flavour than this has. And I just think this is a little bit disappointing. It just hasn't got the typical flavours I'll be, you know, looking for in a Belgian blonde. I really, really have to concentrate to try and eke out them flavours, because they're just not forthcoming, even with that huge amount of carbon dioxide you've got in there. That is disappointing, to be fair. I'm going to give that a 5.5 out of 10. I know it sounds bad, but I just think there's better out there. This is a bit of a disappointment, to be honest. And it wasn't cheap either. I think this was, I got this, where did I get this? Hang on, let me tell you now. Did it come from Beer Sniffers or Noble Green? Now, I kept this because my fucking memory. Did I get it from Maredsous? No, I didn't. This came from Noble Green. And I think it was nearly £3 or over £3. But yeah, that's a disappointment. So yeah, that is going to be a 5.5 out of 10. I'm not going to recommend it, unfortunately, and yeah, just, you know, just a disappointment all round. I'm always wary about beers that have got French names. Now I know this is Belgium, but you know, the French just can't fucking brew beer. But this ain't French, it's Belgian, so you know. So yeah, 5.5 out of 10, not recommended. And remember, I'm drinking this shit, so you don't have to.